Captain Thomas Streff is a 787 pilot, and in this interview he's talking about his career, how he got started, the COVID-19 crisis, pilot shortage, and how they affect the airline industry today, as well as some valuable advice for student pilots. All of this coming right up in the interview, so fasten your seatbelts. This interview is taking off. Welcome, Captain Thomas Streff. I'm very happy you get to join us. Everybody will probably want to hear a lot of what you have to say about a myriad of topics. And I think the best way to start is if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your past as a pilot.
Well, I am now at the ripe old age of 62 and almost 63 years old, and been flying for over 45 years. I started when I was 17. In Rochester, New York. I was born in Chicago. Folks moved us to Rochester for business or job reasons when I was a young boy, and had my formative years there in Rochester. And so I had a very unique opportunity. The City School District of Rochester, New York had an airplane and a program where a high school student from anywhere in the Monroe County area could apply and become a student in their aviation program. But anyway, I got my private pilot license when I was 17, and then when I went to Vincennes University in Indiana, where I worked on my CFI, my commercial instrument, and my CFI. Got an associate's degree in aviation tech there. Was out of money, and so I went to work for a couple of years in flight instructing up in Moline, Illinois at Elliott Beechcraft. Great operation there, and decided to finish my education and go to Rochester Institute of Technology, where I got my bachelor's degree. Now, the whole time I was doing that, I was working in aviation to support, my wife was really supporting us, but I was trying to, do what I could do to help. So I was very fortunate to be able to work for Highland Flying Service, Highland School of Aeronautics as an instructor and a charter pilot. For the couple of years that I was going to school, and then I became their chief pilot after I graduated. And then, just to summarize, I did several other jobs, even worked for a Beechcraft dealer and sold some airplanes, and started a flight school for them, and then they moved me into sales. And then shortly thereafter, the company came in and bought our company, and then they laid a bunch of us off. I was one of those, which turned out to be a real blessing because it gave me the motivation to finally do what I've always wanted to do, and that is fly for American Airlines. Not just fly for an airline, but for American Airlines. And so 6 months after I lost that job, I was on the property at American Airlines. And that was March of '86. So I started as a DC-10 flight engineer and worked my way through about a year and a half of that, and then a first officer on the Super 80 for 4 years, and then a 757, 767 international first officer for a year and a half. Then I made captain to the Super 80. A year later, I went to the Fokker 100, which is just a fabulous aircraft. I went to the Super 80 again as a captain, then the 737 for 10 years. Took a couple of years off because I was sick and got those issues thankfully resolved, and went to the 787, and I did that until I just retired with the COVID thing. They offered me an early out package and I accepted it. So officially I'm now.
Yes, congratulations on your retirement.
Yeah.
Through all of those aircraft types that you were flying or that you described, which one would you say was your absolute favorite?
Well, hands down, the 787 is, they call it the Dreamliner. It's not just a clever marketing name. It really is a Dreamliner in most ways. The maintenance guys love it. Passengers absolutely love the aircraft. I've never heard anybody complain about the aircraft for a passenger not say good things about it. And the things that you read, it's very well accepted. And as a passenger myself on the airplane, I love flying on it. The flight control system on the 787 is hands down unbelievably smooth, stable, fabulous aircraft. I mean, I won't get into all the technical things that Boeing has done with that airplane, but my goodness, for a pilot and for a passenger and the flight attendants, that's by far the best. I will say, however, the aircraft prior to that I enjoyed the most was the Fokker 100. Wonderful aircraft, fun to fly, very ergonomically well designed, which the Europeans tend to have that hands down. But that was just a fabulous airplane to fly. Lots of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Those were the best airplanes to fly, but what about the one destination that you think you always enjoyed going back to flying?
Oh my, there's so many, honestly. And every place that you go to, you can find something if you look for something neat to do, something fun. One of the joys of this business is getting to kind of get a flavor, a small taste for different cultures. And people are friendly everywhere you go if you are friendly with them. So I tend to, I loved going to Japan. I've always had a fascination with Japan. Germany, my heritage is, I'm a Luxembourgese, so the German, love that. Wow. I can't say this is the place I love to go the best. Now, when it comes to flying an approach and landing at airports, that becomes a different story.
Okay.
I would say that Washington National, the river visual approach to runway 19, and the expressway visual in LaGuardia to 13 are probably the two most fun approaches that I've gotten to fly. I love doing those approaches. You're low to the ground with a pretty good turn, and you've got to be on top of your game to get it right. And when you do, it's really fun. It's really fun. I'd like to see Paris for more than one day. I've seen it for 3 days is the most I've ever had a chance to stay over there. In fact, that trip I flew you, I think, that was.
Oh yeah.
We had that was a 4-day layover. It was a 3-day layover, 3 full days.
Interesting. My trip was about 4 or 5 days. I just for all the viewers, I think the where we've met was on a flight from Dallas to Paris, end of December, I believe it was. And I remember I spoke briefly with the flight attendant. I was studying for my commercial, I believe, at that point. Yeah. And she was like, "Yeah, why don't you? I'll ask the guys up front if they have a second." And then I went there, and you guys were super nice. I got to sit in the first officer's chair, kind of look around, think around. I had no idea that the actual knobs and buttons are as big as they are. If you look at it out of the flight sim in your computer, they're tiny. But then you go and they're quite, big and manageable, and that was a great thing. But yeah, no, that was a great flight, actually. Great job on that one.
Yeah, thanks. Boeing, when Boeing did the 767 and 757, they used those big, they're almost like, 3/4 to 1 inch square knobs or buttons. Mm-hmm. And I love those things, they're great tactile feel, which is very important. And anyway, so yeah, they're much bigger than people realize.
So taking it like a step further, you just, before we started the interview, you told me about a flight, your last flight, actually. It was kind of very special. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've been on reserve mostly on the Super 80, on the 787, and which means I'm on call. And so they called me up and they said, "Hey, we need you to go to Madrid." Now, at the time, Madrid was the number 2 hotspot, I believe, or number 3 hotspot in the world for COVID. And I was a little bit. I knew my wife would be very upset, but long and short of it was, I ended up, of course, accepting the assignment. I even had permission from the chief pilot that if I needed to not do that because of my wife, that they would honor that. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't get in trouble or docked pay for missing the assignment or anything like that. So, but in the end, I really felt it was my duty to go. Who knows? Maybe that was the one trip in my whole career that somebody really needed to get to Madrid or back from. And two other guys that already bailed on the trip came to me. There was one other guy available. And so if I had said no and he had said no, they would have canceled the trip. So the reality is I was honored to do it. So that morning, that I went out that was on a Monday, whatever that March 1st or second Monday, first Monday of March was. And what's interesting is I'd heard that the company offered a package to us older guys, to take a voluntary permanent leave of absence. Basically, we're going to retire. We'll let you retire. We'll give you a pretty good deal, make it worth your while to not come to work anymore. And I kind of jokingly said, I didn't know any of the details at the time, but I said to my co-pilots, my flight attendants, I said, when I get to Madrid, I'm going to read what this deal is, and who knows, this could be my retirement flight, Right. And so a couple of us did get to dinner that night in Madrid, and we were the only ones I think we were almost the only ones in the entire hotel. And it was very surreal, I can tell you that. And so I could see what was coming to the United States in a matter of weeks. Anyway, sure enough, on our way back, I took a picture, which I have of the crew. We all have our masks on. I supplied everybody with N95 masks and these orange gloves. And so I have a really great memento. That turned out to be my retirement flight because I did put the bid in. It was accepted. And on voluntary permanent leave of absence until I retire at age 65. So basically, I'm retired.
One of the things that I know people have a question about would be let's say people like me, I'm a student pilot just about to get my CFI, or even if I'm about to get started, what would be your advice to those pilots, whether they should go to flight school, whether they should wait, looking at how the industry is handling everything?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. Of course, this is really opinion where I'm going on this. This is just my opinion, so please take that with a grain of salt, okay? But all the COVID has done is extend out maybe a couple of years the pilot shortage that is here now, okay? Now, it just means we're gonna put a lull in it for a couple of years, I think. Who knows, maybe 3. But at some point in time, this too shall pass. Demand will again pick up. I know we have Zoom and people have Zoom and they're doing, but eventually people are still going to want to travel. I think if you're a student pilot, continue doing what you're doing, because it's going to take you really a couple of years at least to get to where you can get hired by an airline. And by the time this demand catches up again, by the time they've recalled people that are going to get furloughed, and there's no question in my mind that there are going to be thousands upon thousands of furloughs, sadly, but that's just a result of what's going on right now. And but I think those furloughs are going to be short-lived, and I think when you still hit it, the clock doesn't stop ticking, right? So for guys like me, I would have to retire in August of 2023. And that's probably about the time things will be picking up. So I still would have had to retire. There's many, many more. If you look at the retirement projections, those are strong. So they're still going to need thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pilots over the next 8 to 10 years. So I would highly encourage you to stay in it. This is an excellent lesson to be learned in aviation. This job is a wonderful job, but it is full of ups and downs. I mean, you go from you know, you go from, wow, this is really great, and I'm making good money, and da 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 da, and then the next thing you know, you wonder if you're going to have a job in another month. And I fortunately got hired at a time. Uh, I never got furloughed, thank God. But I got down there pretty low in the seniority, but I never got furloughed. So I'm very fortunate. But most guys do get furloughed. And I guess what I'm saying to you is go into this with knowing that it's a very cyclical business. It's very, we're the first to go and the last to recover generally in the business cycles. And the sooner you get in, the better. That's all about seniority. So it's very important that as soon as you can get with an airline, you get in.
That brings me, though, to another question kind of related to the subject, and that comes from Ken Burrs. He's a CFI, and I'll let him ask the question.
Hello, I'm Ken Burrs with Navy Annapolis Flight Center. I'm a flight instructor there, and I just had one question. How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected flight operations there, and what are you guys doing about that?
Ken, that's a great question. I kind of have to only go by what I see in the company communications and from the Allied Pilots Association, who represents the pilots at American, our union. Operationally, the company's been very responsive to the pilots with regard to most of the things that we've asked them to do. And, there's been some issues that come up, between the union and the company, but I don't want to get into that. But at least, getting us masks, getting us things to clean the cockpit with, them cleaning the cockpit, all of those things, from what I understand, are going fairly well. Right now, because the industry has been doing so well prior to COVID, the thought that somebody could get on with one of the major airlines, one of the main lines within 3 to 5 years of training that didn't happen very often in the history. So now it looks like, you're going to have to just wait a little longer, but, just keep doing what you're doing, keep flying. The opportunity will come around.
The next question I have for you, actually, also a student pilot related question. And it's kind of just out of your perspective, which did you find the most difficult to achieve as far as certification? Was it your private, your instrument, your commercial, your CFI? Which do you think is
that's a great question. I would have to say that the commercial was probably the most difficult. 8s around pylons, chandelles, lazy 8s, all the different types of landings and stuff that you do. That, and then all the cross country, all those things, and just the sheer amount of hours you have to build up. Once you've got lazy chandelles and that kind of stuff down, it's like, now what am I going to do for the next 100 hours? But and it's fun, but it can be a little tedious. If I remember kind of feeling that way at times, but it really tests your skill as an aviator, and that's where you really develop your cross-country skills and learn how to manage weather and all that kind of stuff. So right. I would say that was probably the most difficult.
So what would be one of those memorable experiences that you had?
I can't single one out. How many incredibly, amazingly beautiful sights have I seen climbing out in a morning? I'm not a morning person, but I sure have seen some incredible sunrises and sunsets, and flying around massive thunderstorms that just, especially if it's during a sunset or sunrise and the way the clouds light up, watching another airplane pass under you or over you when you're out over the North Atlantic or the Pacific is incredible. What really kept me coming back is you're landing in really crappy weather, and it's very challenging. You've done everything you can. Your guys, your first officer or first officers, if you're on an international trip, we've done all the calculations. We know we're okay to do it by the numbers, do it by the book. And when you roll out of that crappy weather and you roll onto that runway and you've done it safely, it's a tremendous satisfaction. It really is. It's what you kind of live for. I love flying in that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
You know, I don't dig thunderstorms. I don't dig icy runways. Those are the two things I can't stand. Okay. But other than that, I love a good, hard, rainy, windy, gusty landing approach.
How would it be different in a small airplane as opposed to like a 787?
Well, it's a lot easier in a big airplane, frankly. You've got a lot more mass. You get tossed around a lot more in a little airplane. A big airplane absorbs a lot of the G forces, right, on the aircraft as it's going through turbulence. Yeah, sure, it's still bumpy, but it's not that hard boom, boom, and you know, you're not doing this as much. The thing about landing a big airplane is, you know, you've got to, well, same thing with a little airplane. You just got to be very good at managing your speed, and you have to be very good at knowing when to kick the rudder out at the right moment. And a big aircraft like the 7-8, there's only so much forward slip that you can do. So you're coming down in a crab, you know, I think it's over about 20 knots. You don't want to sit there and land like this, like you've been taught to, because you could scrape an engine pod. You do that in your career, you're in big trouble. Okay. So, you know, you're going to have to land it somewhat in a crab, which, you know, makes for not as nice a landing, obviously, but, you know.
That's great information.
Beats a trip to the FAA's hearing room, you know.
Yeah.
NTSB or FAA.
Hopefully not NTSB. Oh man, that would be.
We had a guy who used to teach us what was called Part 1 of our manuals. And Part 1 was all our rules and regulations. You know, it was a big old thick book. Of course, all electronic now, but you know, he was really a great guy, and he had these. I won't give his name out, but his last name, snappy sayings, he used to call them. And one of them was, "Your hearing will improve at your hearing." Or if the FAA invites you to a barbecue, make sure you're not the pig. You know, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, he was, he's the guy that taught us how to really taught us the ins and outs of the rules and regulations and our op specs at the company and that kind of thing. So he was a great teacher.
Excellent. Well, that was this whole, you know, exchange, this interview was very insightful for me, especially, but I'm sure it's going to be insightful for a lot of other people. So
Good.
really thank you for your time. I really appreciate that.